now in terms of tack time, the beat of the drum, how long do things take to do. But 5S is a foundation, which, and there's Japanese words for what the S's are, but of course our English ones are sort, straighten, sweep, standardize, and sustain. So sort, straighten, sweep. I like to refer to people cleaning up their kitchen or cleaning up a garage. It's very easy to unload, put things in an area where you're going to sort and discard what you don't need. Then you straighten out what matters that you're going to keep and discard the rest, obviously. And then sweep kind of implies, I mean, there is a term about sweep for keeping clean, but it's a sweep with your eyes. Is it pleasing? Does things look organized? So we all do that pretty well. It's the fourth and fifth S that become a challenge.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I am your host, Jay Colbert, and today's guest has an absolute wealth of manufacturing and facilities experience, so I can't wait to get into it with him. He brings 40 years of experience in aerospace manufacturing, quality, and process improvement. He has spent his career ensuring high standards in production while solving complex challenges that impact efficiency and performance. Passionate about problem solving, he works closely with teams to uncover root causes and implement effective solutions using lean Kaizen methods and advanced techniques. Beyond technical expertise, he believes success is just as much about the people as it is about processes. Dedicating time to coaching, mentoring, and helping teams grow, he currently serves as the facility's EHS CI support at NJet Aero Bloomfield. Eric Schneider, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. It's such a wonderful introduction. I really touches me. Thank you.
Of course. Well, it's you, Eric. It's what you've accomplished, my friend. So I know you've heard the show, and thank you for tuning in previously. So you will know that my first question is always the same. And that is, with your 40 years of experience and your vast different experiences that you've had and positions you've held, what has been your biggest lesson learned?
Jay, what I've learned is that the people that are going to be involved helping to solve a problem are generally the ones in our facility, and they have something at stake. And the ones that really care, they're the ones that I get a real kick out of working with that will help get something solved. Even though I need to have outside help, we need to have vendors, we need to have specialists. It's about the people that care within the facility.
Outstanding. And I believe I agree with you that it all revolves around our people and great people. So could you say that, like maybe some experiences you've had with the people in your organization and the difference that they've made?
Sure. In our manufacturing world, running lean has a lot to do with not having a lot of overhead. So the people on the shop floor that are making the parts are direct charging. They're hourly people, and they're working against standards that we know how long something should take. So at the machine, when something's going wrong, so I'm going to talk about maybe the maintenance function a bit more than an overall facility.
No,
We've got
do.
some people that not only know how to machine the parts well, but if there's a problem with a machine and they call me out, and we know that maybe ultimately we are going to have to call in an OEM support company for fixing something, if they've been able to take the time and they say, well, Eric, I know that this air regulator filter housing is cracked, and or you know what, I know that there is something inside this chip conveyor that's holding it up. I think maybe I can get to it. And it's great when we have that situation, because to call in an outside supplier, which is generally what we need to do, and we need to have the list of them, there's a lead time, there's costs. And if the people in the shop are able to help out without having it be a big drain on what they're supposed to be doing with making parts, That's just great. And we have a handful of people that I can lean on for things like that. Also on the safety side of things, safety and
Mm.
health.
And you mentioned the biggest word I picked up was caring, people who care. So, how does that show up? How do you see that showing up?
I'll shift to the safety side of things where, I've just talked about machinists that will care, and maybe we'll get back into some other examples and talking on that. But within the world of health and safety, there are a handful of people that, like me, they're not safety professionals, but working with something that they're working with or observing something that doesn't seem right, and maybe having some knowledge, obviously, that I don't have, to be able to identify, Eric, there's something here on this machine, from a safety perspective, or letting me know about something chemical related where we've got something in a storage that doesn't seem right. So caring about wanting the facility to be safe, caring about wanting to have a piece of equipment run in a way that it's not gonna hurt anyone. Just very helpful, and it really, it's I want to work with those people when they bring those things up.
I think it's great, and I think obviously you need to take some credit here. A lot of it probably, and the other leadership team members, because that's more of a cultural thing. Would you agree?
Yes, it is. And I guess, we can talk about people in general, and there are some people that carry things like that with them. Um, and some people may not. So yeah, culturally, and there are some things we'll do, and I know we're going to get into it, so I won't say anything more at this moment. But yes, definitely cultural, and seeing examples of, well, how do I put this? Um, a small success well publicized, or seeing something done well that can be promoted for other people to see. That can go a long way with getting other people on board and realizing they could be helpful too.
I like that. Catching, what is it saying?
It's
Catching someone doing something
catching
right.
someone doing things right, and a small success well publicized.
Mm, yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, would it make sense from that point to go forward and talk about some of the things we've briefly discussed about 5S and your experience and how you implement this program?
Yes. Yeah. And I had heard Dustin Bessard, am I saying his name right?
Yes.
Recently, I
Mhm.
believe he mentioned in his recent podcast with you, and amazing stories from him and what he did in the subservice. But he talked when he was talking on the sub and 5S, and I'm like, oh wow. And I was kind of looking at you and thinking, is he going to ask about what 5S is, or does everybody in this community automatically know it? Well, I'll go back to my lean beginnings, nothing to do with pure facility maintenance, EH&S, but it's one of the foundations of the Toyota production system. And anybody working in manufacturing might have had training or experience with how Toyota does it. And that's what a lot of manufacturing takes a look at now in terms of tack time, the beat of the drum, how long do things take to do. But 5S is a foundation, which, and there's Japanese words for what the S's are, but of course our English ones are sort, straighten, sweep, standardize, and sustain. So sort, straighten, sweep. I like to refer to people cleaning up their kitchen or cleaning up a garage. It's very easy to unload, put things in an area where you're going to sort and discard what you don't need. Then you straighten out what matters that you're going to keep and discard the rest, obviously. And then sweep kind of implies, I mean, there is a term about sweep for keeping clean, but it's a sweep with your eyes. Is it pleasing? Does things look organized? So we all do that pretty well. It's the fourth and fifth S that become a challenge. Standardize, meaning do you have a standardized way of doing things now? Are you going to keep an eye? Some companies and areas have checklists, weekly walkthroughs, and do you have a standard for maintaining that? And then, of course, sustain. Sort, straighten, sweep, standardize, sustain. Sustain is the one that we all have challenges with because you can feel really good about what you cleaned and organized, but a month from now, is it going to look the same?
That was a very good run through, and I have questions to follow up here. So I want to stay on the standardized and sustain because people who are listening, including myself, um, would love to know how have you standardized it within your organization, Eric? Like, what are some best practices that you've found work to standardize the process?
Some best practices are the very simple walk around. So a management team or a team in an area having a time in the week where they're formally going to stop for a few minutes and take a look at what's going on. Very simply, just with a pad of paper, maybe some observations about what looks out of place and what could be done better. There are some very sophisticated systems where people actually try doing scoring. I'm not going to say that in our facility, that's something we're doing now. But for those that want to try it or know about it, the friendly competition that can develop
Mm.
between areas, invite someone from a different part of your facility into your area to do a 5S audit and see what they say. But culturally, as you were mentioning culture before, it takes a culture where people are willing to do that and not just get pissed off from somebody criticizing them.
I love the idea, and yeah, couldn't agree more. So jumping to sustain, then how do you sustain it?
So sustain is a part of the culture and people caring, we'll go full circle to some things we talked in the beginning because
Hmm.
some people really do care about things being organized and looking a certain way. And as that takes hold in an area, then it's the new norm. What do they say? I think I've heard that it takes 30 days to develop a new habit. So
Hmm.
if you set something up in a way that you can keep it maintained and doing something for 30 days, you're probably pretty well on your way to sustain. I'm not saying that day 31, something might be disastrous, but I think that that's where it comes in.
Here's a curveball for all of us right now. What happens when it gets off track, and how do you course correct?
Okay. So it may get off track with this in areas I see. And I'm going to raise my hand as being a poster child about having challenges and issues. I feel like I clear my desk. My method for cleaning my desk sometimes is to put everything in a box and take it home for the weekend. And I
Mm.
feel really good when I come back and I've discarded some things, but somehow the stuff just piles up again. So it's a matter of me recalibrating. But we've got people that I'm involved with. I've been involved with people in this facility for 27 years that have just had that as part of how they run their area and keeping things organized and wanting to look good. So we're a small facility, something I mentioned to you. I'm not like some of
Mhm.
your other guests where they have big staffs and multiple sites. But within our company, you can take a walk from, one area to another, and you can see a difference in how some people have taken care of things and where some people are maybe beginning the journey.
Sounds like a lot of you people take ownership of their
Yes.
area and their responsibilities.
Yes,
That's
yes, we do
wonderful.
see that. It is nice to see how that's developed over the years.
Um, the next thing is there anything else on 5S that we should touch on? I don't want to move away from it too
No,
quickly.
just that again, it's a foundation for getting into other things with lean manufacturing. Because we in America always have great ideas and we want to add on, the Japanese one from Toyota was the 5 S's. We also, oftentimes in this country, there are 6 S's, and the sixth S is safety. However,
Mhm.
a lot of us that talk these terms say, well, safety is just a given and you shouldn't have to bring it up as the S's. But make sure that safety is in there maybe as number one.
Great, great, great stuff. All right. Now, here's a distinction I want to make between you mentioned other guests and yourself and your organization. And I wanted to talk about MAFs, maintenance action forms. What are your MAFs? How do you use them? And how have they been successful for you?
So a maintenance action form is very simply just a unique numbered request for a maintenance issue. There's a format that I've got. When I started here 27 years ago, people that were previously involved in the facility had the MAF system. I mean, I'm up to like 5,400 now. And, maybe back then it was at the 2000s or whatever. But I've heard other guests of yours talk about their CMS. Am I saying that term right?
CMMS. Yep. Hmm.
So there are these computerized systems. People enter job tickets, they make requests. Some of your guests have multiple facilities. They've got staffs. They have to figure out prioritization. We're about 120 people here, half of them, more than half of them in the factory. Um, and I want to know where there's an issue. I promote that people, mine's a very low tech one right now. I had an access database at one time, but quite simply, take the next number on the log, summarize what your issue is, and then fill in the form with here's the area, here's the piece of equipment or facility thing, here's what is wrong, if you have a few ideas about what might need to be done. If it's a machine where we know we're going to have to call the OEM, please give me the machine model and serial number. So just a really low-tech way, handwritten on a piece of paper, or if people are computer literate and using the computer, I've got the format ready for them to send me an email. And then I can keep the log. And I'll be the first to say, just because a maintenance action form is documented doesn't mean that we're jumping on it right away. There are some things I have a scale, and a number one is an ASAP, and a number five is we should be talking about it some more. So it just gives a way to, let no problem go unstated. It's a document. And if somebody wants to, challenge me and say, well, Eric, I put that MAF in last month and you haven't done anything. And like, okay, I'll own that. I'll take it. Obviously, it's a bigger issue and I may have let it slip, but at least it's documented. The maintenance action form number can sometimes be a precursor to a purchase order, which will be necessary to bring somebody in from the outside. So Jay, just the documenting of something so that it's on a piece of paper or in a database. I keep a summary log, and we talk about them at a morning meeting for production if there's an issue, and it just helps me to keep some kind of organization, especially at times where maybe there's a lot going on and we're not able to get everything done at once.
Appreciate you walking through that in such detail, Eric, because there's a lot of organizations and a lot of our listeners with companies that are 120 people or 75 people or maybe 200, and they don't have big, expansive systems. And it's really good to hear. And so I also heard you say you have a scaling system, ASAP, all the way to we should talk more about this,
Yeah.
right?
So, and I think it's actually six. I have my little cheat sheet here. Yep, I do. So one is as soon as possible. Two is within 24 hours. Three is a week. Four is a month. Five is it's a preventive maintenance item. So maybe we're looking at getting a TPM scheduled. And six is we need to discuss it some more.
Mm. You mentioned something about someone says, well, I put it in a month ago. So how do you convey the urgency back to the person who made the request if they might be a number 3, 4, or 5, or 6?
I try to do my best when if someone just drops one off at my desk, I do try to make an effort to get out and talk to them. Even though they may have given me a lot of information, I want to go out and see what the issue is. And I mean, it's even to the point where we're talking about the facility. So if someone's having a leak, I'm going to go up on the roof and I'm going to try to figure out, is it a roof leak or is it something with an HVAC unit that might not be right? I mean, I've had plenty of times where the drain for the condensing has been clogged and that's where the
Mhm.
water's backing up. So thank goodness they're easy. But I'll go out, I'll see the person at the start. We'll agree, we'll talk about it. But then, quite frankly, I mean, I'll throw myself on the mercy of the sword. I very recently had a situation with one of our area leaders where he kind of called me to task on a handful of them. And you know what? It's his right to do that. And it got me looking at a couple of them that were drifting. I guess I'm going to diverge on something with that because
Yeah, please do.
two of some of the ones that this gentleman was concerned about were ones that when they were presented to me, I had no idea what we were going to do. Some of the work that we do in our factory includes some sheet metal work, but it's not as much as we used to do. There was a time in this facility where we could make a lot of our own stuff. But now, because it's limited on what some of the product is that we make and people are dedicated to the product, it's not so easy to get someone to work on fabricating a funnel for a chip collection.
Mm.
So, but then it hit me. It's like, gosh, we've got this company in here doing duct work for us. They're a fabricator. So I ran it by the contact that I have, and I say, Rob, what do you think about making a chip collector, for this machine? And we need a funnel on this one. So the fabricator that happens to be around the corner all of a sudden became my hero. And the guy who was getting upset with me might have thought, well, I told Eric, and now he got something done. But the reality was, I didn't know where to go, who to turn to, and it was just kind of, it wasn't a down machine. There were some things that were a nuisance, and I was just trying to figure, well, I'm not sure what to do. So if someone's not going to help me with the answer, I don't know what it'll be. But fortunately, the duct fabricator can fabricate other things.
Great creative pivot on your part. Great solution. maybe talk about safety as a whole a little more. You talked a little bit about it earlier. I think
Yes,
there's a lot more to expand on there in terms
yes,
of your
yes.
experience and what you're doing with it.
So within our corporation, there's 9 sites, and 4 of them are within the Hartford area, and then others are scattered all the way out to Pennsylvania and Missouri. Um, One thing the company cares about is making sure that there is a lead in each site for safety related things. We're not all professionals, um, but to have a safety committee or at least make sure maybe a monthly walkthrough's going on with an eye on safety, for people to know who they can go see with a safety issue. So similar to what I do specific here with a maintenance action form, my company has a near miss program. And I think that near misses is something that a lot of companies
Mhm.
work on and look for employees to collect. I think some companies even have quotas where, they want to see 3 or 4 near misses reported by every employee. We don't
Mhm.
have that. We like to see 15 a month from each site just to say, look, people are paying attention, they're looking for things. So to tie in the continuous improvement element, I guess what I want to share is that sometimes an issue that's brought up with safety can be the springboard for a continuous improvement that maybe helps productivity as well. So I've seen that a bit. And the near misses that we have, the near miss definition from the corporation is pretty clearly about, a tripping hazard or, something electrical that could be a problem or anything that's more of a pure safety thing. We've expanded it in our facility to include FOD, foreign object debris, foreign object damage related things, because that can affect our business if we've got a FOD issue on one of
Mhm.
our parts. Um, some of the maintenance action form things and near misses, sometimes I've got a fuzzy line between something that's a near miss versus being a maintenance action form request, but I'm okay with that. If it's
Mhm.
documented, it's there. So I want to make sure I'm on track with you, the safety committee, people doing a walk around. The site leads actually meet once a month. We have a Zoom call for a half hour where a central person who kind of facilitates us shares anything from the corporate level that we need to know. What's the training? There's a video training each quarter people have to go to. How things going with that? Is there anything to share from each site? So the safety culture, I'm not going to say it's a very formal one, but it's there for people to know that the company does care. There are people in each site trying to keep a handle on what a safety thing is, and we're trying to build off each other with the site leads and what we share with each other. And then my thing that led into what you were asking about, sometimes there's what I would call a more pure continuous improvement thing that will come from a safety related identified issue.
Excellent. You mentioned something, Eric, that I want to go back to, and that's FOD, foreign object debris or damage. I am actually, if and I may not be remembering correctly, but I don't think that's come up on the show, and I'm shocked that it
Oh,
hasn't.
okay.
So I'd love to talk about that a bit more because that's real. So how do
Yes.
you maybe if you could expand more, and then and to add to that, how do you manage and maintain FOD?
Okay. So, and like I did with 5S, I'll share that FO, the capital FO, is a foreign object.
Mhm.
FO with a small d means debris. So a foreign object, debris, I'm thinking of an example from some of the trainings we've done where like you see cereal in a box with parts, not an actual picture from our facility, but the idea that we're making these precision engine machine hardware, and whether it's a small part or a large part, if there's a container and it's got something in it that's not supposed to be there, that's your foreign object. That foreign object then becomes foreign object debris on a part, and then the foreign object damage, the FOD, which is what a lot of people will recall, um, is that thing that could be a disaster if something's on a part. And a lot of it, I think that this all started more from the aircraft maintenance industry, where if a wrench is left in an engine after some maintenance is done, you could have a disaster. And one of the remedies for that, when you asked about how do we control it, at that level, it's about having shadow trays for your tools and making sure that when the day is done, does every tool, is everything in its place, the place for everything and everything in its place. At a
Mhm.
lower level within what we do at our facility, You familiar with installing a helicoil and having to break off tangs? So a locking helicoil, an insert, it gets screwed into a bore, and there are tangs that get broken off, just little pieces of metal that get broken off after you bang something into place to hold it. Those tangs need to be collected in a little container off to the side so that there's no question about where something like that has gone. And then everybody in the shop is always on the lookout. I told you that I added FOD incidents to the near misses
Mhm.
because I feel like, okay, well, it's not like a safety hazard that someone's going to trip, but it could affect our business because a customer rejects a part, or, worse, as my president likes to say, there's no rest stops at 30,000 feet. So you
Mm.
don't want to have anything that didn't belong on a part or in a part. So to answer also, how is it controlled? It's just the eyes on from people. And as far as containers go, making sure we're doing everything we can to prevent something from getting in and keeping the factory clean. Most factories these days are not like they were 30 or 40 years ago. We sometimes talk about an operating room mentality with regards to a manufacturing facility.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Coludis, is your go to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top notch quality. From project planning to execution, Coludis is there to make hard work easy. Visit coludis.com today to get started. That's a good point, and we've seen the transformation in a lot of places. It's amazing how bright, white, clean, spotless they are. It's very impressive. Thank you very much for expanding on FOD, because again, it hasn't really been discussed much on the show, and it's a critical piece of manufacturing or a component of it. And we know it from the service perspective, because if we're doing work in an area and we're adjacent to a manufacturing space, which we most often are, we need to put floor to ceiling containment up, fire retardant plastic containment. No speck of dust can leave that space, or there's an issue, right?
Have you ever had to take a training before going into a facility? Some companies actually have trainings for
Yes,
vendors that have to do with FOD.
absolutely. Yep. And we've seen the videos of the horrific, a plane falling out of the sky because an engine had a bolt in it or
Yes.
something awful like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very important topic. You made a statement, if I can remember this correctly. The tech stuff is easy, but the people part can be a bigger challenge. I'm intrigued. Can you expand on that a bit, Eric?
So we talked earlier about the people who care,
Hmm.
and there are people who care that just might not be as easy to get along with. Or there might be someone who thinks that their problem of the day is, got to be number one. So, I've heard some of your other guests even talk about listening. So I'm thinking about the listening in here. Sometimes I'm going to call them an internal customer. They've got an issue, or I'm being presented with something. And it's nice that sometimes the problem at a piece of equipment was just that an O-ring needed to be replaced, or that a filter needed to be replaced, or that something was loose, or that I can go to Home Depot to get something that, has failed and it's not a big fancy thing. So technically, some of those things are easy, but the challenge around people that are in, sometimes a stressful environment, we're getting to the end of the month, and we got to make sure that we're getting things out to meet certain goals. Um, Depending on where someone else is coming from, humans we're sometimes a deficient species, and there can be a challenge based on where someone's coming from, maybe just how they carry themselves. I mean, I have my own challenges sometimes, just wanting to, take that breath and count to five. It really does work, and be able to get through an issue that maybe is not going to be so complicated, just based on people having the right attitude and trying to not lose their heads.
Certainly. How do you work with that? Or how do you and your people work with that? That person might be brilliant, great at their job, but they're not that easy to work with. How do you navigate this? This is
Well,
relevant to everybody.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I might be what's the word for self? self. I try to bring some humor in when I can. I'll tell people,
Self-deprecating?
yes,
Yes.
self-deprecating.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I may have an element of that. I try to have some fun when I'm at work. I mean, if we're not having some fun, what's the point? I wear a Hawaiian shirt on Friday, and some people
Ah,
actually
good for
comment to
you.
me and say, "Hey," it's like, well, why aren't you joining me yet with that? So yeah, some self-deprecate. I try to smile. We're taught in communications classes about how to deliver an I message, how you feel on something, and trying to find the right time, especially with someone that might be difficult, to say, hey, look, the other day we were talking about, this situation, and I don't know, did I do something to upset you, or am I in a rough spot with you? So it takes a lot. It's easy to read those things and get the training, but the practice of it with someone who might be difficult can be a little different. And I've just learned that there are some people in some situations where there's only so much I can do, but wherever possible, I look for, to have a little humor, to maybe make a little joke about something that happened. And sometimes this too will pass. So go on to the next day and see where we're at. So I don't have any magic answers, but some humor, trying to find that right time to say, hey, you know what, did I piss you off on something? And fortunately, they might say, oh no, and or they'll let me know they were having a bad day, and we can move on. Being human, I think I said this already. Being human can be difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's a phenomenal way to handle it because you're showing, I hear you say, you're showing vulnerability. You're being very real. You're putting yourself out there. You're taking ownership. That's a lot of what I just heard from
Yeah.
you, Eric.
Right,
That's
right,
wonderful.
right.
Good. Well, this might be the perfect time to kind of take a look at your journey and your background. How did you get to facility and maintenance and EH&S, and how did you get to doing all of this?
When I graduated from Central Connecticut State University, I was in an industrial technology program, and it was like an industrial engineering, but not the pure engineering. And one of the things that I laugh about with that is, in learning about industrial engineering, you talk about motion and time study. And I thought to myself, oh, what an awful job to have watch people work and do time study. Well, guess what my first job at Hamilton Standard was, now Collins. It was a time study person in methods and standards, but it
You
was
got your dream job right
it was a
away.
job in 1983, and it's an impressive company, and I'm going to do this. Well, it turns out that the 5 years in methods and standards and spending a lot of time doing time studies, and as I say, watching people work, it was a great education on seeing many different processes, and seeing things that who knew later on I'd be paying attention to when, the Toyota production system actually requires you to do something similar. So I had seen people doing, I had been involved with some of the quality engineering people at Hamilton, and I thought, that looks like a nice career, what those people do in the quality department and working on solving problems. I'd like to know more about that. So I was fortunate to get into quality engineering, had the good fortune to work on many different product lines at a time when that company, when Hamilton was doing some of their own continuous improvement culture changes. There was a lot of training and statistical process control, team building, facilitation, and I got a lot of that. One of the things that I kind of owe the most interesting parts of my career to having gone to a class on design of experiments, where if everybody knows
Hmm.
the answer to a problem, but all the answers are different, a designed experiment, which is multi-factor, it's just a very cool way. And it encompasses working with people. You do brainstorming, you figure out what some factors are that could be an issue. So the design of experiments, the quality engineering,
Could you
um,
talk about design of experiments again, or a little
yeah,
bit more, please?
so you might be familiar with people using a fishbone diagram to brainstorm a lot of things that could be causing a problem, a Ishikawa diagram. Familiar? Maybe some of
Hmm.
the listeners know. Well, hopefully in most problem solving, everybody can agree what some of the major contributing or significant root causes are. But at those times where you have a few things and you're not really sure, a multi-factor designed experiment can be a way to weed out where you've got a main effect from something or some interactions of others. it could be a conversation in itself, Jay, to go into it more. But it's a very there's a lot of really simple tools with DOE that can help you with minimal amount of experiments and many times with what your production hardware is to learn about, hey, here's what's really causing the problem. One nugget I'll give is that I challenge people that sometimes the measurement method is really the first issue. So make sure you're measuring things right. If you need a DOE, so that's a tool that I like using, and when I'm doing true continuous improvement, sometimes that works out. Okay, to
Excellent.
go on a bit from that.
No, yeah, please. I
All right.
broke your stride. So
It's okay. That's okay. So had an opportunity to go help set up a facility in Arizona. I was on a team that was asked to be on a startup for a division of Hamilton, and I was on the same team out there that within 3 years we brought it all back to Connecticut. So that was a great experience. We did a startup, we did a shutdown. I got a little experience seeing what goes into building a facility and being a part of that. I wasn't a facility person. I was an operations and quality person. And then upon coming back here, a couple more years at Hamilton and then joining up at what was then Birkin Manufacturing. I will say it's a family business. It was a family business then. So joined up with an uncle and cousins to come in as a continuous improvement manager. And after several years, this is a facility where all the machines that liked being next to each other were near each other. All the Bridgeport mills liked being next to each other. All the lathes liked being next to each other. All of the CNCs liked being next to each other. But I'm coming in with this experience of the Toyota production system, and well, the flow of the hardware, maybe it starts on the NC equipment, and then there's a Bridgeport operation, and then we have some inspection, and then we have some assembly. Instead of opposite ends of the factory, let's start doing what we can with manufacturing cells. So I got involved with a couple cells, and our general manager of the time, who happens to be the president now, because we've been sold, we've been NJet Aero for a little over 3 years. So the GM became the president when the family got out of the business. But he had said to me, he said, you're doing these cells, you're working with the plumbers, you're working with the electricians, you're working with some HVAC people, you're working with some construction people. We really need someone to be a facility manager. So I thought, oh, okay, it's still family business, and it kind of felt okay when I mentioned the Toyota production system earlier, and we're talking 5S. The foundation is doing some things that a lot of facility people are doing. The safety was in there. So I took that on for a while, and it was several years that I was truly more facilities and learning a lot because I'm not a professional in it. And then we got to a point where it was important to have me go back to doing some continuous improvement, root cause investigations, working with suppliers. We hired a facility manager, and for over 10 years, he was on board. He retired last year, and I kind of had to fall back, and I was a backup for him with facilities. So I never stepped away totally. And there were some projects where maybe I was interested to be helpful with, like some of the HVAC things, because I was
Mhm.
interested in the energy usage. But since July, I've been back in what's been more purely the facility role and the environmental health safety
Mhm.
activity. There has been some regulatory requirements in this facility, which fortunately we are now a lot cleaner than we used to be. So I've handled a lot of those things again.
Hell of a journey. That was a
Yes,
great walkthrough. Wow.
yes, yes.
Like very impressive, Eric.
Thank you.
Very
Well,
impressive.
I've been
Yeah.
fortunate to see a lot of different things.
That's awesome. You know what? What advice would you give someone starting out? Because that I wouldn't call that a typical path at all, right?
Right.
The facilities. So would you have any advice or takeaways from your experience you'd want to share with someone who might be starting out, or maybe someone who's been in the business for years and wanted to make a
So
change?
and because of the program we're on here, we're talking about someone starting out with a facilities role, a facilities interest.
Well, maybe, yeah, maybe they're in quality right now, but they realize I want to be in facilities and they
Got
want to
it. Got
migrate
it.
over there, something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
takeaways you might have from your own path?
Um, I kind of fell into it. It wasn't something I was looking for. Um, it is interest. It feels good when something goes well. So I will say there can be satisfaction. I've heard, I think that you even have it in your, in the way that you intro the program. And I've heard other people talk about, the calls that you can get at night,
Mhm.
being in on the weekend for something. I will say there's some satisfaction when someone needs something and it goes well. Um, it's a behind the scenes thing a lot. I think people have talked about, maybe not everybody knows what's going on and what it would be. But, as far as the advice, I might want to kind of get into some of the tour stuff that I talked about a little bit with you and brought up.
Sure.
If you're
Please do.
in, if you're in if you're in a certain field and you think you want to explore it, if you're in a company where there is a facility department, ask for a tour. Ask for someone to walk around and talk about the day or what's needed. If you're working in a facility, you probably know something about the facility role because you might be a customer or you know what it's like when someone has to do something to develop a new area or to fix a problem. With younger people, I definitely want to reach out. And I also want to give a shout out to IFMA because when I first had that facility role years ago, one thing led to another, and I did get involved with the Hartford chapter of IFMA for a while. I'm not going to say I'm involved with them now. I've thought about maybe I need to rekindle. I've heard many of your guests talk about IFMA, but then getting back to young people, people that are in school, I like giving a tour here that I call quote to cash. So students that are in manufacturing
You
that
said
have an
quote to
yeah,
cash.
quote to cash. So if you think about a manufacturing facility, we
Hmm.
are at the very early stage with salespeople and engineers. We are looking to get work in here. So
Hmm.
there's a quoting process. If you win the job, you're going to now start purchasing the materials. You're going to do the engineering. You're going to develop processes. You're going to then finally get out into the factory. You've got first article inspections of things. So the whole process, if you were to have, a process box for everything that goes on in this factory, very generic, there's anywhere from 12 to 14 major steps, major departments where you ship the product and then hopefully you're collecting your cash. So the tour I like to give for almost anybody is, it's more so on the manufacturing and quality side, is the quote to cash so that you can see every element of it. But the facility is a big part of it. I like to say that the first piece of equipment is the building. So we
Mm.
may get a
Mm.
very fancy new machine, but I may have to remind our president that there's a rooftop unit that's failing, and we really better take care of that rooftop unit before it's summer, or we're not going to have the right temperature for that new piece of equipment to machine something to a tight tolerance.
Well
So the
said.
building, so it's kind of a tough question in a way, Jay, because I don't know the people that are looking for it. If there was if there was some IFMA related students, or if there was students that are interested in facilities, I would tailor the tour to talk about the things that we do that have to do with, and I got to say, environmental health, safety, and maintenance, because here, it's everything. It's not separate departments for maintenance versus facilities.
Mm. I that's actually something that's come up with recent guests too. That you may or may not have caught it, but it's more of a campus system than it is separate departments, and they work very, very closely together. I think what you're doing with these tours is tremendous for a couple of reasons. You're giving your time, right, to do a tour for younger people who want to learn about the business or facilities or quality or safety. And I love the quote to cash, like give them the real world. Hey, this is how this works, right? This is what's going on here. And how did you come up with this? Was it you who designed this tour system? How was it founded?
When I was at Hamilton Standard, that is now Collins, we had a family day once many years ago. I mean, I'm because I've been in this facility 27 years, and so I'm going back to that 40 that you alluded to. But there was a day where they had a family day, and I could bring my wife, and at that time, my now 33-year-old son, he was a youngster, but to actually have a time to walk through the facility and see, where people are working, see what they're doing. So that was for families back at Hamilton. And I carried that with me into here, thinking and it's amazing because there are schools and students. I'm active with our aerospace component manufacturers cluster here in Connecticut, the ACM, and we do a trade show. And October, November at the Connecticut Convention Center. I like to give a plug for it. And the 100 or so businesses that are all part of the ACM, we have a trade show, but the trade show's in the afternoon. In the morning, we have a future workforce development fair. And at that fair, we have anywhere from 800 to 1,000 students from middle school and in some cases through college come meet us at our booths that we set up, talk about this. In this case, we're talking about things like manufacturing and quality. But it's
Mhm.
also a place where some teachers will say, "Hey, do you give tours at your location? Can you come in?" So in the back of my mind from years ago, I knew what it was like to bring my family into a building, coming here, thinking about the future workforce, being involved with the ACM, having contacts that want to come in and have a tour. And I think there's a little level of pride for some of the employees if they know that we're showing people around. It's a little bit of a challenge. You have to
Mhm.
be careful. Everyone's got to have the safety glasses. There's some areas that we don't walk into. But we're proud of what we do, and it's not your grandfather's greasy factory anymore.
Mm.
So we need young people to see that this is a good trade, a good thing to get into.
So great on so many levels. I mean, several times on the show and just reality in our world, it's hard to come across qualified people who want to join the workforce in facilities.
We have to
And
work on the parents.
yeah, that's a good point. Yes, I agree. I just that's it's the first time anything like this has come up, and credit to Hamilton too, right? For starting it with a family tour, and now you're continuing that on. That's just huge credit to you. That's awesome. Um, before we wrap up the show, I think there were a few other things you might want to touch on from you personally and some experiences you've had.
Yeah, we were just talking about the touring, and I want to highlight something that um, we're not doing one this year, but for the last 5 or 6 years, even with COVID, it was a virtual presentation. There was a time where the UConn, some people from the UConn Medical School, University can, oh, by the way, go UConn, right? UConn Med School had a person who met up with at that time my cousin who was the owner, and then they were at a cocktail party. And this idea that first year medical students taking a tour in a manufacturing facility could benefit for a program that the teaching doctors wanted to do on occupational safety and health. And to
Mm,
give the students an idea of, hey, sometimes there's going to be injuries from people in the workplace. And we're going to bring you into this facility. There's multiple ones. We weren't the only one. And get an idea of what those issues could be. There could be
mm,
something from, a fume issue. There might have been something where there was a fire. And they would bring in the students for not a very long tour, but we would also take time to talk about, yeah, here's something that could happen, but here's what we're doing to hopefully remedy it. And having the
mm.
medical community in the building has nothing to do with making our parts, but it had everything to do with making our parts safely. So that was just an interesting thing that I wanted to touch on and put out there. It's not something everyone can do or would want to do, but just an interesting thing.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I think that the past two things you've talked about, they're unique. They're giving back. They're paying it forward. All of these things, Eric. It's wonderful. Are there
Um,
any other experiences? I
Yeah,
think we have some.
you and I had talked about this, and I do want to mention because I haven't heard it from some of your other guests, but I'm willing to bet that many of them volunteer their skills at either a community or maybe their faith-based area. I'm on a building operations team at my synagogue, and it's in part because, I'm doing these kinds of things. I'm surely no expert at work with it all. I need to have the outside suppliers, but because I've had that experience, I appreciate being on a team with our executive director and about four other congregants. And we, you know, a, a, a building in the community needs just as much work as a building in the business. And what's different is you're a volunteer, but
Mhm.
it matters to me, and I hope some of your other guests, maybe they just haven't mentioned it, but trying to put some time into helping your community organization with what you know for the facility and health and safety stuff, perhaps as well.
That's great. No, volunteerism has come up a few times, and not a ton, like you said, but maybe I'm not asking enough questions around it. So appreciate you sharing that, Eric, and good for you for doing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
100%. So how about outside of work and all this volunteer work you're doing, Eric? Like with your family, how do you spend time? Do you like to travel? What are your hobbies? What do you do?
So I've been very blessed with my family. Been married for 37 years to my wife, Bonnie. She's a preschool teacher, so we do very different things. She's actually had me at the school to help fix some things in the preschool room. So I feel
Good
like
for
again,
her.
I'm doing well with that. I have three children. They're all, I guess you could say, adulting. I have 33, 30, and 25, and they're all doing well. So I've been very blessed with family. For myself personally, I mentioned helping out at the synagogue, but the synagogue's also a place where I'm in a ukulele group, have a lot of fun playing some music and singing, and we go out in the
Cool.
community and we do a couple performances at some elder living communities because they can't run away so fast, but they seem to enjoy us. In a singing group, people in technical fields, I run into it a lot. People that do things, whether it's engineering or possibly facility. There's something about music and a hobby with music. A little bit of folk dancing sometimes. Wife and I like taking walks. I enjoy doing a few things in the yard. It's the time where I'm going to go look at my dahlia bulbs and see if some of them survive the winter in the basement. And I enjoy growing some things. By no means am I a fancy gardener, but just being outside and enjoying things. So I do keep myself busy.
I would say you're extremely well-rounded, from dahlia bulbs to ukuleles to yeah, that's
A
cool.
smattering of ignorance.
Well, Eric, you know what, man? We met only a couple of weeks ago, and I'm thrilled that we did because you've been an absolute pleasure and a treasure trove of knowledge and experience here on the show. So I'm sure all of
Thank you.
our listeners
Thank you. I
appreciate
was
that.
I was really looking forward. It was I think I told you I laughed when I got the email. I'm like, I'm no facility rock star, maybe a coffee house performer, but no rock star. But I've had some fun. I've had some fun preparing for it and thinking about it. So I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for investing your time. Oh, and I forgot to ask, if people do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so if they have further questions or want to know
Hmm.
more?
Yep. I thought about that, and I think probably best is my cell phone. So you ready?
Go.
860-970-7580. I'm not going to recognize a number, so it might take me a while to listen to a message and call back or a text. Texting's always good, but I feel like that's probably the best way on the chance that someone wants to talk more or ask me something. Very happy to help share. I'd be very pleased to hear from some people who might want to bring something up.
Outstanding. Eric, true pleasure both meeting you and having you on the show. Thank you so much for investing your time really with us today.
You're welcome, Jay. Thank you.
Of course. And for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. If you learned something from Eric, if you laughed, tell someone else about the show. Yeah, another great episode of Facility Rockstars. We'll catch you all next time. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.